Hello, I'm delighted to have Jaime Seltzer here, who is Emmy Action's Director of Scientific and Medical Outreach, and she's here to talk about her latest research project. Thank you so much for talking to us today, Jaime. So can you tell us about your new study?
Sure. It's called Symptom Cluster Characterization in Complex Chronic Disease. And we have partnered with Dr. Mady Hornig at Columbia. She is my MPI in this study. And we're looking to examine symptoms in people with diagnoses of long COVID, ME/CFS, POTS, hEDS, and MCAS. We hope to get people with other complex chronic diseases as well, but those are our target populations. We're looking to see which symptoms cluster together, which symptoms are common more early in illness that has a kind of triggering onset. And we're looking to determine how much overlap there is in the symptoms of these diseases.
That sounds really interesting and quite complex. Who else is involved in the research?
Apart from Dr. Hornig, we also have engaged with several of our most well-known clinical partners in this disease, Dr. Cindy Bateman, Dr. Hector Bonilla, and Dr. Sue Levine. They will provide a core of validated diagnoses for some of the participants so that it's not just patient report. We'll also know a certain percentage of participants' diagnoses for sure. We've also partnered with the Human Phenotype Ontology Project at Jackson Labs. Dr. Peter Robinson is our primary partner there. They have a history of creating algorithms that create a phenotype for each disease. So they used to work solely with very well understood genetic diseases to create a picture of what the disease looks like to the clinician and from the experience of the patient. But now they're moving on to complex chronic diseases like ME and like long COVID. And I have been working with that group for some time, and we'll have a paper with them out soon, hopefully before the study really launches.
And what do you hope the study will tell you?
This is the most exciting part to me. It is not a biomedical study, and that's the first thing that people are going to notice is that this is inquiring into the patient experience. I think we vastly underestimate how valuable that can be. First of all, a paper just came out just weeks ago showing that patient-reported long COVID symptoms were more complex, more detailed, and more complete than the ones reported by their clinicians. So this actually, inquiring into the patient experience, reveals valuable and unique information that researchers and clinicians would never have access to otherwise. It's not just that though. Once we have a phenotype, we can compare that to genotypes. We hope to be able to compare genetics to the way that the diseases appear in the patient. We can also compare symptoms to biomedical findings, and we hope to be able to do that in the future. Last but not least, symptoms that may on the surface not appear to be associated may turn out to be associated. So this is just a random example, not necessarily a hypothesis, but let's say that low dopamine is involved in one of these diseases. You might have a patient say, I have restless leg. I have attentional symptoms like ADHD-esque, and I have ME. And you might see that cluster over and over again and then say, well, perhaps this is going to tell us where we might choose to look in regards to an etiology. It won't be certain, of course, but these associations can be surprisingly illuminating. I don't think we're just going to find nausea, upset stomach, IBS clusters. I think we're going to find some things that might be very illuminating.
I'm sure there's going to be a huge amount of interest in the ME community about this project. How can people with ME and healthy allies help?
I'm glad you asked that. We will have social media posts for people who are taking the survey themselves so that they can advertise their participation really easily. We will also be looking for healthy controls, and healthy controls are almost always the sticking point in these studies. This is something, I mean, we have combined, 10 sets of diagnostic criteria, fatigue measures that are validated, attentional measures that are validated. So we've ended up with so many different questions, and that really even leaves out the things we've asked patients about. We talked to members of each disease community and inquired into the symptoms that they have, but don't actually see on any diagnostic criteria. And so we have 400 to 500 questions. These are going to be rolled out in 6 parts over a long period of time. And of course, you can pause and go back at any time. However, keeping a healthy person engaged is going to be the challenge. So we would strongly encourage people to recruit at least one healthy person and get them to promise that they're going to go all the way through the survey.
So it sounds like it's a long survey. How are you going to keep people engaged throughout it?
That's a really good question. And we've had a couple of different thoughts about how to ensure that people stay involved. There are some gamified elements to the survey. So there is a theme very similar to the old school adventure games of the late 80s and early 90s. And we have little characters, and we also have rewards that you earn after completing the different sections of the survey. And they're very similar to the awards you would win through gameplay. This is a small budget study. We would have loved to have made an actual game where you can walk people around, but it's graphics and shareables. So those shareables hopefully will be fun, entertaining, and they'll also alert other people about the study because you can share them on Twitter or Instagram that you've won this particular award. We're trying to make them a little funny. Not only that, but of course, we're working with Qualtrics, which is a kind of survey platform that's very secure, and people will receive emails to remind them when they've finished part 1 of a survey, but they haven't started part 2. For the people who do have chronic fatiguing illnesses who are going to be involved, I want to emphasize that as long as you don't close out the window, you can stop and go back anytime. You could answer a question a day if you wanted to, and finish this whole thing in the time that we're going to have it open. And that's the idea. We want people to be able to complete it at their own pace. Once all of the sections have been released, a healthy person could just complete them all in a day if they really just wanted to get it out of the way.
Thank you so much for talking to us and telling us about this really exciting project.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.